And so we move on to target B. Target B is about solving systems of equations. There's three parts to it, and this is part one. One of the ways to solve systems of equations is by substitution. And the word itself should give you a hint. It's a sub. If you play games, if you play a sport, um, they do subbing all the time. So if you're, let's say, a basketball player, you're gonna do a sub and they're gonna replace you for someone else. Okay, that's what substitution means. When I'm absent, you guys get a sub, which means that they are replacing me. They're putting someone in my position. Okay, so that's what substitution means, subbing. So it's the same thing with equations. You are going to replace a variable, okay, based on whatever variable they gave you. You're going to replace it, okay? So once again, things get tricky now because if you remember in KC4, our answers to solve an equation was just a one answer. So answers would look like x equals 4, for example, right? And that was it. We figured out that x equals 4 and I was done. But for KC5, since we're talking about two equations, that means that we will be talking about two variables. So I need to solve for one variable, but I need to keep going and solve for the next variable. So you will always be finding the answer for both variables. Another thing to keep in mind is that for systems of linear equations, your answers should always look as a coordinate point, which means that we have an x value and a y value. Your answers have always to look like that. So that is called coordinate point, okay? So here we go. Let's get started with question number one. Out of the two equations that I have right here, and again, how do I know they're equations? Because they have the equal sign, right? I have the first equation and the second equation. When you have the two equations, you need to figure out which one gives you the variable by itself already, okay? So either x by itself or y by itself, okay? So what do I mean by y or x by itself? Remember, x equals 4. If x equals 4, okay, that's telling me that x is by itself. X has to be 4, okay? Well, one of these two equations, the ones that I have right here, has the variable by itself. Let's look at the first one here. Remember, equation has the left and the right side. I notice that x and y are both on the same side. They're both on the left side. So therefore, none of the two variables are by themselves. Let's look at the second equation here, the second one. Okay, the left and the right side. On the right, I have x by itself, but I have minus 1. So it's not by itself. On the left side, I have y by itself. So ding, I finally found the variable that's by itself. So I'm going to use this one. Okay, I'm going to highlight it. I always suggest that you highlight the equation that has a variable by itself. Okay, and this one is the y equals x minus 1. All right, just like we were practicing, you're going to plug in for y. You're substituting for y. So sub for y. Why? Because y is by itself. What are you going to sub for y? You are going to be replacing y by x minus 1. So you're going to take the second equation, so this one right here, we're going to rewrite it 2x minus 3y equals negative 1. You're going to take the second equation and you're going to sub for y. So here you go. Here's y. I'm going to substitute it. So I'm going to write 2x minus 3. And I told you that every time you sub for the variable, you're going to plug it into parentheses. What is y? Y equals x minus 1. Okay. Equals negative 1. All right. So I sub for y. All I have to do now is what I've been doing for the past months, which is solve the equation. Solve for x. Since we solve for y, we need to find out how much is x. And as you can see, the only variables I have is x. That's your hint that you're going to be finding x. All right, the first thing you need to do is get rid of the parentheses. To get rid of the parentheses, you need to distribute, which means multiply, right? So negative 3 times x gives me negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 1 gives me positive 3. Everything else that you didn't do anything to it, you just bring it down. So there you go. Okay? Next, after distribution. So first thing is distribute. After distribution, most likely, you're going to have to combine like terms. Okay? All right, remember it's an equation. We're solving for x. So on the left side, I have 1, 2, 3 numbers, and on the right side, I only have 1. Therefore, I know I need to combine like terms. Which ones can I combine on the left side? Well, I'm going to combine 2x with negative 3x, which gives me negative 1x plus 3 equals negative 1. Again, I didn't do anything to the 3, so I just bring it down. Didn't do anything to the negative 1, so just bring it down. All right, after I combine like terms, step 3 is to solve the equation. This is the part where you get rid of numbers by doing the opposite. So I need x by itself, so I'm going to get rid of 3. To get rid of 3, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Okay, so let me change my color pen here. So I know that this is another step. Negative 3, negative 3. Again, I get rid of this. I have negative x equals negative 1 with negative 3. It's going to be negative 4. All right. Do I have x by itself? No, not yet. Not completely, because x can never be negative. Remember that. So I have an imaginary negative 1. I need to divide by negative 1 because it's my last step. So finally, x equals positive 4. So this is my answer for x. X equals 4. Your next step, step 4, is that you need to sub for the new variable. So once again, we're used to stopping at this step right here when you find x equals 4, but not for the KC5. We have to keep going, okay? What are you going to do? You're going to use the equation. Actually, you can use whatever equation you want. Remember, they gave you 2. Use whatever you want. However, I always just go back to the one that I subbed for. I was subbing for y, so let me use this equation right here, okay? And I'm going to bring this right here. This is step 4. I'm going to copy the equation y equals x minus 1. Again, I just copied the equation here. I already know x is 4 because I figure out in this step right here. So guess what? I'm going to plug in for 4. I'm going to sub for 4. Every time I see an x, I'm going to write 4. So y equals 4 minus 1. And all I have to do is do the math. 4 minus 1 equals 3. So my answer is going to be 3 for y. Final step, okay, write your answer as a coordinate point. Okay, so on this one, my answer is x goes first, then the y, because you forgot. So x is 4, and the y is 3. And there you go. This is how you solve the systems of equations for substitution. Okay? Hopefully we understand this. We're going to try to do the next one, okay? Together once again. All right, you have 2 equations. Remember, you are trying to highlight the equation where x or y is by itself. Okay, let's look at this equation right here. Remember, you have the left and the right side, left and right. X is on the left side by itself, so I'm going to use this one. I'm going to highlight this one because x is by itself. This means I'm going to sub for x. Because x is by itself, I'm going to sub for x. I'm going to use the other equation that didn't highlight. Remember, you use the second one, the one that you don't highlight, which is this one right here. I'm going to use it. Okay? Every time I see an x, which is right here, x, I'm going to plug in what they gave me. They gave me that x equals negative 2y minus y equals 9. Okay? Remember, every time you plug in for a variable, okay, I plug in x, it's right here. This is I know negative 2y. Every time you plug in for the variable, remember to put it in parentheses. All right, as you can see, I don't have a number here on the side next to parentheses because remember to get rid of parentheses, we have to distribute. Distribute to the number next to the parentheses. I don't have one. As you can see, I don't have anything here, right? So I have an imaginary 1. 1 times negative 2y is just negative 2y minus y equals 9. Remember, after distribution, you're going to have to combine like terms. I'm going back to step 2. I'm right here, combining like terms. All right, on the left side, I have negative 2y minus y, which is going to give me negative 3y. I can combine them. They both have y. So now I have negative 3y equals 9. This is my last step. Okay, I'm going to step 3, solve the equation. I only have one number on the left, one number on the right, which means I'm on my last step, which means I'm going to divide by negative 3 because I need y by itself. So y is going to be negative 3. Remember, I'm on step 4 now. Step 4 is to sub for the variable. For the new variable, I should say, for the new variable. Okay. So I have y equals negative 3. Again, you can pick whatever equation you want, right? And I told you, for the fourth step, I'm just going to use the equation that I highlighted. Why not? It's already there, and I already used the second one, so why not use the first one? I haven't used it yet. So x equals negative 2y. I know y is 3, negative 3, so wherever I see, I need to sub for y on this one. Okay, so that's what I'm doing for this. So x equals negative 2. Every time you sub for a variable, make sure you put in parentheses. So I have negative 2 times negative 3, which means that x equals positive 6. Okay, and my last step, make sure you write your answer as a coordinate point. This is what counts on your test, on your practice, on your quiz. If you don't have it as a coordinate point, I'm not going to count it. Make sure you plug it in as a coordinate point. Okay, this is x and this is y. And I'm done with this one. All right, so it's the same thing as like question number 1. Okay. Question 3 gets a little bit tricky. Remember, I've been telling you, to do substitution, you have to start with the equation that has the y by itself or the x by itself. Okay. If you look at both of the equations they gave you, okay, by the equal sign, I'm going to draw the left and the right side. If you notice, the y's are by themselves for both of them. Y is by itself on the left side for both. Both the equations are half y by itself, which means, okay, that y can equal y. It's a true statement. Why? Because y is by itself and y is by itself, which means that they can be the same thing, which means all you have to do is put the equations together. Again, let me do this one in pink so you guys know what I'm talking about. This one in green, because this is my other y, right? I'm going to plug in. So again, this is y in pink, this is in green, okay? I'm going to plug in for y. I'm going to substitute. What does the y in pink have? Negative 3x plus 4, okay, equals. What's my y in green? 4x minus 10, okay? And then after that, we'll go back to solving equations, back to like what we have learned in KC4. Solve for x. You have two numbers on the left, two numbers on the right, which means get rid of whatever number you want. It doesn't matter at this point. So I'm going to get rid of this negative 3x. I'm going to add 3x to both sides. So now I have 4 equals 7x minus 10. All right, I'm not done. I have to keep going. I start on the right side this time because I have two numbers. I only have one number on the left, so I have to start on the right side. The number I'm going to get rid of is going to be 10 because it matches on the other side. 7x has an x, obviously, but 4 doesn't have an x. So therefore, I cannot get rid of 7x. I'm going to get rid of 10. I'm going to add 10 because it's a negative. You do the opposite. So I add 10. So I have 14 equals 7x. This is my last step. So that means I'm going to divide by 7 to both sides. So 2 equals x. Okay? Woohoo! We figure out how much is x. However, we are not done, right? Remember, we have to figure out the next one because we have to write our answer as a coordinate point. Okay, well, remember, pick one equation, the ones that they give you. Pick one. I don't care. I'm going to pick the pink one. Y equals negative 3x plus 4. Again, I solved for x. Let me change my highlighter here. I solved for x, so every time I see x, I'm going to substitute because I already know x is 2. So here we go. I'm going to do y equals negative 3. I see x next to 3, so I'm going to plug in 2 and plus 4. Okay, and then you just do the math. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6 plus 4. And I don't know why it's not letting me type anymore. There you go. All right, negative 6 plus 4 is going to give you negative 2. So my final answer, I have y negative 2. My final answer is going to be 2 and negative 2, x and y. All right. And that's how you solve systems of equations by substitution. Technically, you're going to be solving through the whole problem. Okay, substitute the equation they gave you. Once you figure out one of the variables, you have to substitute again. So it's just subbing and subbing and subbing through the whole thing. Okay, make sure your answers are always on coordinate points. If you ever need help, please come after school, before school, all right, to get extra help. This can get confusing, so please ask help before the test. Things are going to get tricky with Target B Part 2.